the Battle of Britain represents Hitler's first failure, but really in the long scheme of things, it really doesn't really matter. Mainly because of the fact that what can Britain do compared to Nazi Germany? Britain's all that Britain has. It can blockade Nazi Germany and it can bomb with their Royal Air Force, but they're not really a land threat because they don't have the army to do it. So when Hitler turns his attention to the Soviet Union, he's got basically a fly or a gnat just annoying the heck out of him from his west, and he's looking more to the elephant that's all out to the east. So in the spring of 1941, he's focusing his attention completely on the Soviet Union. And on June 22nd, 1941, he launches his attack on it. At first, it looks like a repeat of Poland and France. The Soviet Air Force is caught by surprise and destroyed. His armored divisions penetrate deep into Soviet territory and cause great confusion and death and destruction. And it's a huge undertaking. It's one of the largest, if not the largest, military operation in the history of mankind. Think about it. 3 million German soldiers are advancing along a 2,000-mile-long front. The world has never seen anything like this. Hitler believed that it could crush the Soviet Union in a short amount of time, and honestly, it's kind of reasonable if you know what he's thinking. He regards the Soviet Union as an inferior people. Russians, Ukrainians, Turkic people—they're all biologically inferior to the Germans in his mind. Therefore, how they are going to compete against these blonde-haired, blue-eyed Germans. Moreover, they're communists. And who's the founder of communism? Karl Marx, right? And Marx was Jewish. And so in Hitler's mind, he's thinking that there's no way a group of biologically inferior people are going to withstand the onslaught of the greatest people on earth. For a while, it looked like he was right. The German attack went in 3 directions, and they were going to St. Petersburg in the north, Moscow in the center, and Kiev in the south. But by December of 1941, the German army is laying siege to St. Petersburg. They're just on the outskirts of Moscow, and they overran Kiev. It didn't look like the Russians could do much more. But things get sour in December. Despite the Blitzkrieg and the defeats of the Soviet army in the summer and the fall of 1941, the Soviet Union was actually quite prepared for the war. Stalin believed that the Soviet Union would be attacked from the west. So what did he do? He took the industrial power, an industrial base of his nation, he moved it east. He moved it past the Ural Mountains. So he could afford to lose all of this land to the Germans because the Germans are not taking they're not taking the industrial heartland away from the Soviet Union. Moreover, Stalin's best troops are not even in the West. They're out in Manchuria during the invasion. Manchuria was conquered by the Japanese, and in 1939, the Japanese tried to do a little bit of a undeclared war against the Soviet Union to see what the Soviets were made out of. And when they were surprised by the ferocity that the Soviet troops gave, so Japan backed off. And Japan never declared war on the Soviet Union, and the Soviet Union only declared war on Japan in 1945 after the United States insisted they do it. So to make a long story short, when the Nazis invaded, Stalin ordered these troops to move to the west, but they weren't thrown into battle piecemeal. The battle before Moscow ended in the year's fighting. Russia's climate was so hostile that it's difficult to fight except in the summer and the fall. In the winter, everything is frozen, even oil. It's very hard to operate a tank if you have frozen oil. And then in the springtime, everything just turns to mud. So in 1942, Hitler decides to continue his assault. He no longer has the strength to continue on these 3 fronts, so he decides to look for the south. And the reason why is he wants the Caucasus Mountains, mainly because of the fact that there are oil fields there. If he can take those oil fields, he can deprive them from the Soviet Union. And that attack begins in June of 1942, and it was a repeat of 1940 and 41. Germany is driving hard and fast, and by September they were entering the Caucasus Mountains. But then Hitler makes a fatal error. He's going to look and see the city of Stalingrad, and he sees it as a prize. After all, this city has the name of Joseph Stalin attached to it. So it'd be a major propaganda coup, and Stalin knew it too. So he goes and besieges this town of Stalingrad. In fact, he tries to take the town of Stalingrad, and it becomes an immense failure. The Germans lose over 300,000 soldiers here at this one battle alone. From January 43 on, from January 43, with fits and starts, the Soviet Union really just pushes the Nazis out of the USSR and back into Germany. So that is what is the significance of the Battle of Stalingrad. It represents a major turning point for the war in the East against the Germans and into the favor of the Soviet Union, although it takes time. So what's going on in the West? Britain's still at war when Hitler launches his major attack on June of 1941, but Britain is considerably weaker than it had been before. Its army lost everything at Dunkirk. It could not provide the Soviet Union with much help, and it was in no condition to create a second front to come to the relief of the Soviet army that was fighting for its life.